Hello and welcome into the Gale Force Podcast Studio. I am your host, Ronnie West of iMagnet Management. I want to welcome you to High Traffic Ideas Podcast. We are going to cover quite a few different things. Once again, I own a marketing agency, a video production agency. I want to be able to share some of the knowledge that I have kind of gathered together over the last few years and be able to share it with you so that you have a better understanding of how to grow your business, your side hustle, your passion, whatever it might be. I want to be able to help educate you and inform you on some different things just so that you can make better decisions kind of moving forward and just have a better understanding of marketing, videos, content as a whole. So that is why we have this podcast. I want to thank you for joining. We are live on YouTube right now. We're going to be live on a bunch of different ones, but I think right now we just want to make sure that we are getting out and getting this message out. Make sure you check all the clips, follow along. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will address those. So again, I want to thank everybody that has watched. We're getting a lot of good reviews back, a lot of content getting out to you, and good responses back. I want to thank my guests over the last few weeks. We had Tyler Newman on of MGT EDH. We had Benjamin Watkins on from ATP Productions and Mission Possible. And they kind of shared something that I kind of want to get into right away. Today, our high traffic idea, the something that I've noticed that a lot of these guests have tended to mention was authentic, organic content rules. And so that is something I'm going to make sure I repeat and let people know. It's something I'm talking to a lot of my clients about. And it's something that you can do for free. And as we have talked about, Google Business Page is by far the most important platform that I think you need to be utilizing and getting content up there. I've had a couple customers talk about, yes, they're posting images and that's great. But if you've gone in and you've noticed there's the posting an image, usually next to it, there is adding a post. And so essentially, talking about these three things is kind of, if you're going to be creating a post, making sure you are talking about your location, letting people know locally in your area. We work with a lot of service-based industries who are either mobile tinners or they have a shop. And so obviously, if this is something that you sell a product, it's not specifically garnered to you, but you're going to want to talk about your location. Where are you located? Where did you do this job site that you went and installed window film on? Two, the product and or service that you did. You installed XR film, you installed Prestige, Night Vision film onto these different ones, Apex film onto the car, letting them know the specific product that you use. So then they know that in their head when they show up. All right, so they know where you used it, what you use. But I think the most important part of all of this is the why. Why did you install this? Why did this customer need this particular product installed on their car, their business, the window film, whatever that might have been? The where, the what, and the why are very important to kind of help turn up that organic content. And because that's when somebody's sitting there searching on Google looking for you and your posts show up, you're going to show up organically. You might be doing you might be doing ads, but it's so important that you also are adding in organic content along with any ads or organic content or social media content. If you are neglecting Google Business, you are losing money. So again, that was my high traffic idea of making sure that you are optimizing your authentic organic content to kind of help show up in those searches. That, like I said before, and I will keep letting people know because I talk to so many people and trying to get this word out. Your Google Business Page is the engine for the map pack. It is the engine for the Gemini results. If you are not posting in the Google Business profile, you might as well forget about showing up in the Gemini responses. And typically people are putting in a question, Google will answer it there. They're not going any farther. They're not clicking down to page 1, 2, or going to the bottom of page 1, clicking to page 2 or page 3. They're reading what the AI prompt says and they're clicking on the link that's available to them. And if you are not posting in your Google business page, then you are not showing up there. So making sure that you post organic, authentic content, let them know about the where, the what, and the why, and that will help just get some of that attention onto your business, which is essentially what you're looking for. So, with all of that being said, as I've talked about plenty of times, we are a marketing company here at iMagnet, but and what one of the other pieces that goes with that is your website. And I think website terms are thrown around so much that people don't know what they're saying typically when they're asking us a question. So I wanted to take the opportunity, since I had some time, I wanted to kind of walk people through and give this analogy as far as what your website is and understanding fully all of these kind of pieces together. So let me get the ticker going. So this is understanding your website. And I think the biggest piece that I'm going to kind of use an analogy is think about your website as a house. And so essentially there's all these different pieces. If you're a homeowner, you know, there's one thing after another that you have to kind of be aware of and pay attention to. And all of that is very, very similar to your website. So essentially, the very first thing, it's the thing that's listed up on top of here. If you're on YouTube or wherever, or hightrafficideas.com is your domain. And so essentially, whatever your company name is, .com, .net, .org, whatever it might be, your domain is essentially what we will call a domain is your .com. And a lot of times the very first website I made, I remember the company was so excited that we finally have a .com. And so people can find us online. That is kind of the first step. If you start a business, is you might have got a little side hustle going and might be selling to friends at trade shows. But once you get that .com, you're essentially on the map. People can find you from anywhere in the world and reach out to you and get an understanding of what you're doing. So let's take this analogy as a home. Your .com is essentially your street address. And so that's how people find you. You own it as long as you renew it. Typically, a lot of the ones with GoDaddy, they usually have a year subscription or a 3-year. And you always will have to renew it, typically a year, depending on if you're a very unique name. Typically, it's about $20 a year. If it's something that's very common that has other terms that other people might be wanting to get, you might have to be bidding or reaching out to some sort of subseller that might have already purchased it. And so that cost might be a little bit higher. This is something that can be transferred. If you decide to move your website to different places, the .com can stay with you as wherever you go. And you want to try to make it as easy to remember typing it in. And if it's something that you've noticed over time, the last few years, think about all of the major giant corporations. They all have one-word names. So it's very easy to kind of remember and type in Facebook.com, Tesla.com, Apple.com, whatever it might be, Nvidia.com. They all are very simple, short names so that you're able to type them in and be able to find them. And so I think a lot of people understand what your domain is, what your .com is. And so this is now where I think things are important to understand. Hosting. Now, this is something a lot of people don't fully understand. They sometimes merge thinking what hosting is into what a domain is. And so hosting is essentially the plot of land that you put your house onto. And so or your street. Essentially, if you can kind of think of it, it's the place that you are putting this house at. And typically you are renting that space. So it's no different than property taxes. Like there's still going to be some sort of fee unless you own your own servers and you have stuff set up. Typically, the files that contain everything that's in your website will be hosted onto a server somewhere, and that's usually typically a monthly fee. Sometimes it could be more or less. Uh, and like I mentioned, you can decide to pick up that house and move it. I think in the 80s, I used to see a lot of houses that people would put up on a truck and you'd see them driving across the road. We don't really see that much anymore. I've seen a few, but essentially, your website can be picked up with its domain with the same address and be brought over and dropped into another plot of land. Obviously, with addresses, it's going to get a little weird, but essentially, you can keep the same number on there that you would bring with you. So understanding that hosting is where your house is sitting. So that is definitely the big piece. You need to have a plot of land. You need to have a hosting environment in order to have your website reside at. And one of the big things to consider, just like a house, the quality of land. So if you have something rocky and it's unstable foundation, you might have server speed issues. There might be some security issues and stuff that might holes in the ground where people could dig through. So if you think about it in that way, making sure that you have a high quality hosting environment to make sure that that house or your website is sitting stable somewhere. And so that's something to think of when you are looking at different places, understanding and trusting who that you're working with in order to put that website onto their servers. Trust is a huge part of that. So then we kind of get into the website build and design. That's essentially the construction, renovation. If you want to add on additional pages, that's no different than saying you want to add on a sunroom or you want to extend your garage. So the construction of your website, whether it's the colors of the house, the siding, all these different things are essentially kind of what is putting your website together. The plumbing and electrical, the functionality, the forms, the integrations in between pages, making sure that everything kind of flows properly is all a part of the web development or the design of the website. So you could go and use Squarespace and there's plug and plop and different things like that, where essentially you can kind of get a house up, but it's not essentially as bespoke as you may want. And so that's just something to think about. If you need renovations or you need to kind of go in and do some updates with your website, making sure that you have easy access to things is important. Whereas I said, like with some different website design companies, it's a lot harder to kind of go in there and change things up just because it's so rigid in the way that it's built that you just can't access some pieces. So now we're going to kind of get into the weeds a little bit as far as the smaller specifics. So if you kind of backtrack, we've got our address, that is our domain, our .com. We have our plot of land, our hosting environment, and we're building up this construction piece, which is the web development of our website, adding different pages and links and buttons and all of those things. That is all what is encompassed with those three pieces, which are essentially the three main pieces. So next, one thing that I want to mention is something that I don't have a lot of experience with, but it does make sense. Obviously, I am the marketer for iMagnet. Matthew is the web developer, and we're going to have him on in a couple of weeks to kind of really get into these details. But again, this is something I've had so many conversations with people that I wanted to make sure I kind of outline this in the easiest to understand, easily digestible of what these pieces actually are. The next one we're going to look at is the SSL certificate. So essentially, that is your security system, the locks on your doors. It keeps the visitor safe. Anybody that's staying over or kind of entering into your website, they're not going to have their information hacked. There's not going to be a break-in. Shows the padlock in the browser. Requires trust for Google rankings. So essentially, a lot of times you might have an outdated SSL certificate, and it's something that will need to be kind of checked on and updated. So making sure that that security system is working, make sure that that website is safe. And so that is something to definitely consider and make sure that you have updated, or that you make sure whoever is hosting your environment is making sure that all of that stuff is up to date. The content management system. So, like I mentioned before, there's Squarespace, there's Wix, there's WordPress. All of these are essentially the blueprint or the floor plan for the construction of the website. It'll let you rearrange rooms. If you understand everything that's there, WordPress, you can kind of go in, and I would say the majority of the sites that we work on are WordPress. But we will have people kind of bring over, like I said, they'll transfer over their website to us, and somebody else built it with some other kind of builder. And so we have to kind of diagnose and understand what all of these other builders are to make sure that we're doing the same processes that we want to make sure that their website is going to be safe, productive, and be able to be seen by Google. So having some CMS system like a WordPress, you're able to rearrange rooms without tearing down walls. And so you essentially keep the structure in place, but you're still able to kind of get in there and adjust different things. Lets you make changes without needing a contractor for every little thing if you've dealt with that with any kind of home ownership. So that is something I think is really important, is making sure that that system is user friendly. I know for me, like I mentioned, I've used a lot of Squarespace because it's so regimented in its building. It's a lot harder to kind of go in there and make changes that you're wanting to do to make it look maybe a little more updated. It's going to have some different features that are harder to work with if you're not someone who is an expert with kind of the web development stuff. Plugins and extensions. So that's essentially like your appliances, your add-ons, the dishwasher, the security camera, the smart thermostat, adding functionality without rebuilding the house. And so a lot of times I know there's like Google Site Kit. I just updated an image revolution. So somebody's homepage, their images that would fly by when you open up the page, that had gone down and needed to be updated. And so someone who's hosting your environment needs to make sure that they're checking on all of those plugins, because a lot of times if they're outdated, just like the gentleman that I fixed the site today, that image is gone. And so essentially it just looked clunky when I went onto the page, and it's a couple clicks, poof, it's updated and it's back up and running. So, and those are simple things, but it might, if you aren't sure where to look, you might do some damage that you didn't know. You might take a sledgehammer to the wrong wall when all it was you needed to change a light bulb. So understanding those pieces is super important when you're going in and making sure you're updating different plugins and extensions. Backups. Having a backup. I had mentioned earlier that essentially your website is a folder of all kinds of, whether it's text, images, videos, the code, whatever it might be. Having a backup of that is essentially having home insurance. So making sure that if something happens, or if you make an update and for whatever reason the website goes down, you have a backup in place that you can put in and replace whatever messed up before, and then your website goes back to its original form. And so always make sure that as soon as you make a change, that you're updating those backups so that you have it just in case if something happens, because it can be something simple. It could be one of those plugins does something or just didn't connect properly. And if you don't have a backup, you're having to work through and trying to figure out somewhere in the code or something with the extension to remove it in order to get it back up. But if you have a backup in place, you can kind of load that up, and then your site is back up and running. And then you can go over and kind of diagnose the issue of whatever happened while your site is back to normal. Bandwidth. This is something I love the analogy that I was given. The bandwidth is the size of your driveway. How many visitors can you bring in? And if your bandwidth is slow, whether you have a very slow open speed, so when somebody types in your .com, your domain, and all of a sudden it takes a while to load, that might defer people and want them to leave. Deter, excuse me. People are lazy inherently, unfortunately, and we are very impatient as humans that if the site's not loading, we're just going to jump ship and look for the next one. So making sure that your bandwidth is up to date. Uh, how many visitors can totally show up at once? Too small and traffic gets backed up. Larger sites need really wide, they need parking lots in order to make sure that they can accommodate everybody that's coming in. And so that's no different. If the Costco down the street has a massive parking lot, they can bring in a lot of visitors versus my driveway. I've got 4 or 5 spots, and that's all I'm able to kind of bring in. I couldn't all of a sudden say, hey, I'm Costco, let's kind of bring in the hundreds of people. We just wouldn't be able to do it. So that's something to think about when you're asking questions is how is the bandwidth speed? Is this something that I can manage if all of a sudden you have a sale or some sort of viral content on social that's going to bring in a bunch of people to your site? Is your bandwidth going to be able to withstand that? And finally, one of the things, and we can definitely go down a rabbit hole on this one, is the SEO. And so this is, again, we've talked about this, how your site is seen by Google. But if you're thinking about it as a home, this is the signs, your landscaping, essentially your curb appeal. How does this look when people come by it, whether they see it through a Google search or whatever it might be, and they decide to click on your link whenever they're seeing it on a search engine? It's making sure that your address shows up when people are looking for houses like yours or for websites like yours. Good curb appeal means more visitors show up. And obviously, if you have a business, that's a huge part of this. So making sure that your SEO is up to date. And this is one of the things that we always make sure when we build out a site that we're going into the website. Every single service page is the most important. Just because those are the ones that are going to typically be seen by Google when somebody is searching or by the viewer when they're searching on Google. So if you're running a window film company, that your homepage should be by far the best SEO page on your website. If it's not, then you're in deep trouble. Next, if you have commercial film, residential film, automotive film, paint protection, ceramic coating, auto detailing, any of those, making sure that each one of those is fully optimized. And when I say that, that's something that usually people get confused by. So again, you can go back and look at some of the other videos when I went in and I looked at the SEO, making sure that if somebody finds your page and wants to share it with their husband or wife, that the image is clear and visible. A lot of times people don't have any images included into their SEO. That's making sure that a featured image is a part of that page. And within that, that featured image has the keyword for that page. So if it's your keyword on the paint protection film is PPF, making sure that that image says PPF, making sure that the keyword is listed in the SEO title. So when someone is sharing that, that it actually shows what that page is about, that it's in the URL, in the domain. So typically, if you look up on the top, it might say YouTube /, and if you're on my page, high traffic ideas. If you go to your website, it'll say whatever your company name is /.com, and then or there'll be another slash and it'll be paint protection film, automotive film, residential film. And so sometimes if that isn't listed, and a lot of times you'll want to have the city name included on there as well. If we do blogs, we make sure that the keyword is listed within that URL so that it's easily searched. The meta description has it as well. You're making sure that you're utilizing top search hashtags or tags within each of those pages so that if somebody searches, there's more likelihood of your page being shown. And so all of those pieces kind of go into play. And I think understanding this and making it much easily digestible, like I mentioned, of understanding that your website is like a house. And I'll run through this again. So essentially, your domain is your address. It gives people a place when they're searching, they can go and find it, and it makes it easy to just kind of go in and search, and that your domain is listed and you come up. The hosting environment, the plot of land of wherever you're placing that house, with the construction of the house is your web development. Your CCL certificate is your security system. Uh, Understanding the blueprints. Where is your page being built? Is it Wix? Is it Squarespace? Is it WordPress? That is the blueprint for the construction, so that it's easily understand for whoever is putting work onto your site. They can figure it out by looking at these blueprints and know where to go. Plugins and extensions, your appliances, your kind of add-ons, the additional features that make your house look better, run better, be brighter. Uh, the backups, making sure that you have an insurance policy for your website, and that if something happens, you're able to at least have a backup file ready to go. The bandwidth, the size of your driveway, how many people can come into your website, understanding those pieces, as well as the SEO, which is the curb appeal. Now, again, we do a lot of these different items when we're building out sites, when people are transferring or migrating their site onto our servers. Those are all services that we offer at iMagnet. If you have any other questions, make sure that you reach out to me at ronnie@imagnet.com. One of the things that we do, like I mentioned with SEO, we do an SEO refresh. It's a one-time fee, and we can go in there, check all of those service pages, and make sure. One of the things that Matthew always talks about, and that we've gotten a lot of questions about recently, is it bad for our website to have a bunch of pages? And so a lot of times this means people want a decorative page for 5 different cities. Excuse me, they want to have a commercial window film for 5 or 10 different cities. Same thing with residential, same thing with PPF. And so essentially they have all of these different pages. And one of the things Matthew always says, another analogy, is imagine that your website is a tree and all of those additional pages are roots. And so if a storm comes through, having those additional pages in place gives you that firmness within the ground, within the categories that you're talking about, to kind of withstand and hold up in nature. And I think the biggest thing to understand with that is making sure that you're not just copying, pasting all of those pages, that it's not the same thing for Dallas, for Garland, for Fort Worth, that they're the exact same thing, and the only thing that changes is the name. And that's why we always talk about, like I mentioned at the top of the show, using authentic, organic content. So if you did a job in Fort Worth, use the image of the business in Fort Worth. Talk about the specific needs of that city. Yes, if you are local, they're all going to be very similar, but don't just copy and paste a whole bunch of pages. Google does not like that. Change it up a little bit, add some different pieces, add in some specifics about each city on those pages, as well as being specific about the film that is being used in those places. If you have case studies, this is another one that one of our clients has wanted to do, which I think is huge. Since we offer blogs, we have been trying to do a lot more specific content around a particular job, essentially a case study. And so that in itself, if you have a bunch of different case studies that are talking about the different film and different location, that's essentially the exact same thing as having a bunch of landing pages for Dallas residential film. But if you actually have a case study about residential film that you installed in Dallas, I think that is much more specific, much more niche. That is something that is going to kind of hit somebody in the Dallas area that has a home, has the same issues that they were dealing with. They're going to probably relate more to that blog post or that case study than just the landing page. So that is something to consider as well. it is not a negative to have more pages on your website. It's actually a positive as long as you're updating them, as long as you're not just copying, pasting, because Google will know. Google is checking all of your pages within a matter of seconds and will understand, hey, they're trying to game the system. So if you can make them a little more specific to each area, I think that's where you're going to find those benefits. And those are things that you can do for free if you understand the platform that you're working with. If you have questions, reach out. We want to be able to help you kind of grow your business. So, with all of that being said, I hope that you have a better understanding as far as the concept of a website build for you, because that's essentially what we want to kind of help educate you so that you have more information to make better decisions. It's no different for any of your customers. I think it's if you have a customer come in that knows what they want, is informed about the film, and comes to you and says, hey, I want to add this, this, and this to my car. Can we get that done? It just makes things much easier. So that's why we want to do that for you. And I hope that you would be able to do that with the content that you're sharing, the content you're posting onto your website, hopefully informing that potential customer in the future about how you manage their problem that they have with your products and services. So, again, I want to thank you. We want to make sure that you have a full understanding. Obviously, this episode is brought to you by iMagnet MGT. If you have any questions, reach out. We have actually a brand new kind of website deal going on. We've been building websites for 10 to 12 years for the window tinners. If you go to this page, if you go to imagnet.com, you can see our if you go to imagnet.com, you can see our portfolio of all of the different websites that we've built within the window tint industry. And a lot of times what we would do would be you had to pay quite a bit of money to pay for half and then do quarters. We are now offering monthly installments. So we understand we work with a lot of smaller tint shops. It's harder to kind of pay that giant price at the beginning. This is an option now for you if you want to be able to put down and start getting a website for you. You only have a small monthly fee to start paying in order to build that out. Yes, there might be some paperwork and other things involved. Obviously, we want to make sure that you're not just something and then jumping ship. So there will be pieces in play. If you have questions about this, if this is something that makes sense to you, that you want to be able to kind of get on a monthly package so that you can actually get your .com and have people find you, we want to be able to kind of connect that dot and get you going as we kind of move forward into the busy season this year. So again, if you have any questions, reach out to me. Otherwise, you can put Matthew in front of at imagnet.com and reach out to him. He is the web developer. Again, he will be on before we head down to Film Fest at the end of the month. Hopefully we see you there. One of the things that we're going to be doing there is we're going to be bringing back the Talking Film podcast. So if you are interested in creating some content and jumping on the pod with me for a few minutes, we can do that as well. And I will share that with you, and you can have some free content to post out to your customers to explain your products, your services, your experiences, and all of that. We want to help you grow your business for 2026 and beyond. Once again, I really hope that you guys will check us out on the socials. If you found us here, we will see you guys next time. I am Ronnie West of iMagnet Management, and this is High Traffic Ideas coming to you from the Gale Force Podcast Studio. We'll see you next time.